Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, we've got a really cool episode lined up. I've already said to Mark that, honestly, some of the stories that will get told within the next hour or so, it will just make you think because it's a story of inspiration, what he's had to go through. He's done some of the greatest moments in the EFL, and just his whole story is brilliant, I must say. I'm joined with none other than Mark O'Brien. Mark, first of all, how are you, mate?
Yeah, no, I'm grand, thanks. As I always say, I'm glad to be here.
Well, Mark, like I said, it's such a cool episode lined up. We're going to be looking across your whole career from starting out to where you are now, and like I said, all your journey. So let's get straight into it then, Mark. Can you tell us about growing up in Ireland and the football scene over there and where you found your love for the game?
Yeah, so growing up in Ireland was just like any childhood. I think we were always out in the streets kicking a ball around, and as you say, I used to get involved in everything that I could, whether that was rounders, skateboarding when I was a kid. There was everything, and I think my brother, who's 2 years older than me, enjoyed football a lot more than me when I was younger. But I
Wow.
just kind of followed in his footsteps. So when he went and played for the local team, I went up 2 years younger than him and just trained with the local team, which was Cherry Orchard. And within that, the manager liked me, but I was still too young to play. So then I went up the next year. I really enjoyed it. And it was just from that way on, I was still, again, football wasn't a major love at that point, but I enjoyed it because, as I said, I was kicking a ball around, I was running around just being a normal child. And then as the years went on, I just gradually started to love football, and then I became obsessed with football. And then I think when I was around 11, 12 years old, when you get to the bigger pitches and different things, football just took over for my life. That was all that I wanted. And it was from that age that as time went on, I started to then get trials away at places. At the age of 14, I started to play for the international scene under 15s. And as I'll always look back and just say, sometimes they were the best times. They were times where you were just loving it for the sake of the game that it was. Nothing to do with it being your job or nothing to do with anything that could go on across the border in England. But the ultimate goal was to fly away. And when I got given that opportunity to sign for Derby County when I was 15, it you could have put me halfway around the world for it, and I would have moved happily away from Ireland, even if it would have been at such a young age. But football was an obsession for me. It was I got to kick a ball every single day. I got to train every single day, and that was something that was there was no other dream job out there other than that for me. And as I said, got given that opportunity, and then within the space of a year of me moving away from the age of 15, and then I turned 16 in the middle of that season, I got to make my debut for Derby County. So one summer you're playing in a local park with your local side, and then a summer later I was playing in front of 25,000 people at Vicarage Road. So as I said, it was a whirlwind, but yeah, my whole childhood and everything was what you want to call it, just a normal childhood where I just got to enjoy everything.
Well, sounds brilliant, mate. And like you said there, you would go on to join Derby. But before we get onto that bit, let's talk about coming through the ranks at Cherry Orchard. So, probably from an English point of view, you don't really hear of much of a big football presence, I would say, in Ireland compared to England, obviously, with the Premier League, EFL. But for you, obviously, growing up in Ireland, you mentioned you got into it via your brother. What is the football landscape like in Ireland as a spectator?
I would say the football landscape is probably a lot more known now, where it's seen a lot more as academy levels and different things, whereas it was Sunday league football, Saturday league football for younger ages. That's all it was ever seen as, but it was always very competitive. So the Dublin League was always really competitive. You'd get a lot of really good young talent, which is why the system back then was, that's why you moved away at the age of 15 and 16, because scouts were able to come in and go, oh, we'll have him, we'll take him from that team. And that was the way that you got scouted. There wasn't an academy system where you have to go through an academy from different age groups. There were different age groups, but you could move from team to team around Dublin. Who are the best team? Who wants to sign me? And all that. And that's the way it was. There was never really too much of a structure to it. But the one thing it was very, very competitive. So the one thing that we probably had an advantage over a lot of young English academies was the fact of everything was about development in England. Everything is about your force touch, your positional play, your awareness on a football field. Whereas in Ireland, you kind of had to pick that up for yourself. Now you train twice a week, but it wasn't like something where you're getting coached every single day in an academy. It was no, look, you go play a game, and then that's why I always believe what Irish kids had over a lot of English kids was the competitive nature, was putting your head in where people wouldn't put their feet, would be putting tough tackles in, and football meaning a lot more than it being handed to you at such a young age. So when you're the age of 9, 10 and 11, you could be playing for Manchester United at the age of 10. Now that looks amazing to say a 10-year-old is playing for Manchester United, whereas when you're a 10-year-old in Ireland, you're playing for your local Sunday team, but you're fighting for everything. You're putting everything in. And that was always like the way that I would always say the difference between two things. But I think now in Ireland, especially with the League of Ireland, they've put a little bit more structure to it. So those players that are coming from the Sunday League teams and the local teams, they will all get put into the League of Ireland teams now in their academy system. So then the League of Ireland will then reap the rewards of a financial gain if these players are good enough to go away to England. So now it's trying to slowly develop it in that aspect. But I think back then it was, if you stood out from the crowd, if you stood out in the league, if you stood out for everything, you almost were hoping that when you get like an Easter break in school, a team wants to take you over for a week. And I remember I went on trials at Liverpool, Man City, Blackburn. And with those trials, they were always just like different elements of saying, oh, do I like this place? Do I not? Did I do well? And they would take you back again. But your ultimate goal was give everything at such a young age to move away and now make football your life. Now make football, this is going to be your job. And that's the way it was growing up. So there wasn't, as I said, a set structure, but it was an understood structure that everybody kind of knew you're going to move away at a young age if you're good enough.
I think it's really interesting you talk about that as well. Like you said, really, if you're an Irish one growing up in your age group, with your pretty much age at the time, there wasn't really a way to progress through the island leagues without making it as a job. You'd have to come to England. Whereas now you probably do have a better structure where you could come in. You might have a potential role where you could go through the island leagues and perhaps transfer over to England. But for you, looking back now, if you would have stayed with Cherry Orchard, not taken the risk, not moved to England, do you think there would have been any possibility at the time that you could have still gone on to be pro?
I'd say there would have been a possibility, but I think the avenues of it would have been a lot tougher because you can get to a senior men's team. Now, I've known a lot of lads that could have stayed in Ireland, and look, I could have moved to the League of Ireland if you stay in it long enough and they like what you do, but I think the avenue was a lot more narrower. I think the longer it went on or the older that you got, it almost seemed as though it was getting a lot harder to move yourself away. Whereas, as I said now, it's almost set up for that structure that, no, like you're going to give everything to the Irish setup and the Irish structure, and then if you're good enough, you will move away. But I think with some Irish teams that get to make it into European football nowadays, which are Shamrock Rovers and teams like that, that can be a certain financial gain over there where you do have a chance of making a living for it. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the ultimate goal is to get to England. The ultimate goal is to try and play in the Premier League. The ultimate goal is that, but I think there's enough of a structure in Ireland that it doesn't make you panic from an early age to think that I have to do it at this age or else I don't get to make it. I think it's a lot more relaxed where you feel as though you're a little bit more under control. If you don't make it at a certain age, well then look, there's always another time and there's always like a next year or the year after type thing. So as you say, I think it's a lot better now for Irish kids, but back then it was you need to make it away, and that's the way to progress your football because there's no progression in Ireland at the moment.
100%. And something else which I thought was really interesting was when you were talking about making the transition over to Derby, moving over to England. You mentioned how there was an excitement rather than any trepidation. I just think that's really interesting. And can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, like I said to you before, I was obsessed with football. Like football was everything. So me in school, if an English essay, they told you to write an essay about something, it would be a football story. Like everything was just football mad, and like I was a Manchester United supporter growing up. Like everything was just focused mainly on football. You check the newspaper on a Tuesday to see a fixture on a weekend. Like I was just that obsessed with it that, like I said, I could have moved halfway around the world. So for me to get that opportunity to move to Derby, it was somewhere I was comfortable and happy after I went on a trial there. That I just thought football's going to be every single day. Like, because in Ireland you didn't have it every day. You trained twice a week with a game on a weekend. Now I look at it and say, I get to do this every single day. Like, I get to kick a ball every day and run around every single day. Like, I was obsessed with that. And like I say, that took over. So me leaving home when I was 15, I didn't have a sense of homesickness. I thought, I can't wait to do this. I can't wait to run around and kick a ball. I can't wait to run around and train every day and see where it goes. Like it was brilliant. And that's why I always say it went kind of from strength to strength to strength. And obviously I did have a setback along the way. But even in that time, yeah, like I could have moved anywhere and I didn't care where it was, because it wasn't that I didn't miss my family. It was just the sake of, well, it's for football. It's what I love and this is what I'm going to do.
For sure. And you also mentioned about some of the other teams you went on trial at, one being Liverpool, but obviously you were going to choose Derby. Why did you go and choose Derby? What split them out from the other teams you were looking at?
Derby, for me, felt like a home from home. You felt as though you were wanted. It felt a little bit more like of an intimate setting where you felt as though you were valued. I think when I went to Liverpool or when I went to Man City and when I went to Blackburn, it almost felt as though you were just another number. Now, Blackburn, I was close to signing there, but everything just fit at Derby. You'd go over there, you got treated nicely. Well, I got treated nicely everywhere, but I would look at it and say you get treated a bit more nicer in a sense of they looked after you a little bit better. Like they almost checked in on you. How are you doing? How's your family? How's this? And where I was living and the people and the lads that were there made me feel just as welcome. So, like you say, everything as the whole package, not just because, as I have always said, not just the badge that you're wearing. Like, yeah, it'd be great if you had a Liverpool badge, a Man United badge, a Chelsea, Arsenal. Yeah, it looks great from the outside, but you're just part of a massive conveyor belt of people halfway around the world that they can go out and buy who they want, when they want. So that's an added pressure to yourself. Whereas Derby felt as though, do you know what? It's a very, very good club with a lot of history, but also you felt as though I've got a chance here. Like, because they can't go out and spend vast amounts of money to try and bring people. They have to take care of their academies. They have to invest into their academy. So when they have to invest into their academy, they have to look towards academy players to break through to then progress onto a first team. So if you were good enough, you were going to get given the opportunity. And as I said, within the fourth season of me doing that, I got given that opportunity and I made my debut.
Exactly, and we'll get on to your debut just in a moment. But before we do, one last note about the juxtaposition from Irish football to playing with Derby. I'm trying to think of comparisons. Probably the most likely one that the viewers may understand is comparing non-league sort of to the Irish setup, where a lot of the time players have to do stuff their own. They have to clean their own boots. They have to get all ready. And I'm sure it would have been the same coming through at Ireland. But with Derby, I would imagine the team took care for a lot of you with that. Was it weird getting adjusted to that, where it was more the team you were relying on rather than just yourself?
I think a bit of both, really. Like, don't get me wrong, I think when I moved into Derby, when you move in as an academy player, you've got so many jobs to do. Like, they kind of teach you the fundamentals of you have to earn the respect. Like, I think football's changed nowadays, where a lot of academy players don't have to do those jobs and don't have to clean boots and don't have to do things. Like, when I was in Derby's academy, you had to clean boots, you had to clean your changing rooms, you had to clean the pipes, you had to do jobs, you had to move the ice covers off the pitches. You had to do like all of these things because you were seen as you were learning your trade. You learn respect or you earn respect. And the only time that you don't do these things, if you make it for the first team. If you play in that first team, you've earned the right not to do these jobs. So it gave you an incentive to work harder, to prove yourself, to constantly prove yourself, to get the best out of yourself. And that's what I look at and say that teaches you your discipline along the way to go. It's not just going to get handed to you. Now you need to work hard for it. Now you're in the door, work even harder for it. And by the time you do get that opportunity to move forward. It's the best feeling ever. So, yeah, I think when you move away, it's a different culture change altogether from Ireland. Like you say, it's not about just focusing on yourself to do well, but also at the same aspect, when you're in an academy, it's the exact same structure. Like football, I've always said it, is the most selfish team sport you'll ever play in. Because as much as you want your team to do well, at the end of the day, you're in this career for yourself. Like that's the way. That's like the kind of be all and end all of football. You are in this career for yourself. As much as the team is successful and everything around you is great, you are in football to play it for you. So you have to train harder than some of your teammates. You have to give a little bit more. You want to outperform your teammates just because it pushes everybody. And if you all go in the same direction, but at the same time, when you're in the academy, you have to stand out from the rest and keep putting the performances in. You have to leave people behind and keep putting the performances in, because at the end of the day, it's your career. And if you want to make it to that next level, you've got to stand out from the rest, and you've got to do it in whatever aspect possible. And if that's down to the hard work, doing your jobs properly, training properly, playing in games and performing, well then look, you're going to have to put it all in, and you're going to have to leave people, like you say, who might not be doing the exact same thing, because just as quick, if a position opens up and it's between you and that other teammate, you're not going to stand there and say, oh, you go ahead of me. No, because I want it just as much as you, so you're going to have to work just as hard. So that's what I believe potentially the differences are, but there wasn't too many differences, because at the end of the day, it still fell onto me how to make it, when to make it, and how hard to work.
You spoke heavily about having that desire there, and I would imagine for a lot of the homegrown talent who may have been in the academy for years, maybe starting out at under seven, under eights, maybe they had a bit more of an ego, more relaxed over you. And then even if you compare it to the likes that come through Manchester United, Arsenal, you mentioned how it's about a conveyor belt of just talent just washing up at times. But from where you grew up in Ireland, you also mentioned about it loving the game to begin with. Do you think that was something that really helped you when you got into the academy, having that love for the game still and having that real passion that others might have lacked as they came through?
Yeah, I think that plays a massive part. Like, the one thing that I think I realised later down the line in me career is the fact of the love for football should always shine through. So it's like, I look at academy players even till this day, and they get put in the system so young that they almost kind of get coached out of the enjoyment of football, and it turns into a job so early on. So when it turns into that job so early on, by the time you reach 15, 16, whatever age it is, unless you have that hunger, or unless you have that desire for football and that love for it, it's very difficult to try and G yourself up for things. So I think that went in my favour, that I love football so much. Look at, there's some lads, like you say, that could have been over there since the age of 12, and they love football, but I don't think they love it as much as me, because they've had academy football for so long. So technically they could be a better player, but with that little bit of fire in your stomach, do they have it? Possibly not. And sometimes that can be the little telltale sign to why a manager likes it, to why a manager doesn't like it. And the one thing about football is it is a massive game of opinions. Sometimes you do have to be in the right place under the right manager at the right time, because one manager can say he doesn't like it and the next manager thinks you are the best player since Pele. Like, that is the difference in football. So yeah, the love of football is something that probably put me in good stead, because, as I said, put me anywhere on a pitch, I was willing to give everything every single day, because I was enjoying it.
For sure. And this passion, this fearlessness that you keep talking about, I think it would have proved important when you did eventually start getting around the first team. I know a lot of players, a lot of youngsters, when they do get to this stage, they mention this feeling of an imposter syndrome, that they shouldn't belong there. I'm not sure if you had this, but could you sort of understand why other players do get that?
Yeah, but like, I look at that and say that's just like anything in life. Like, people who want to start new businesses, new jobs, new everything, everybody already can have a certain level of imposter syndrome, because to an extent, I think in football, it's like, as I say, you go through the ranks long enough, you've made a lot of good teammates along the way in the academy system. But then if you start outshining them, you almost feel bad for outshining them, because you're thinking, oh, well, I don't mean to make you look bad for me to look good and all these different things. But yeah, I think once you step into it, it is that whole point of, I think for me, football, I've always said, was like an alter ego for me. Off the field, I was really quiet. I wouldn't speak to a person. Like, I'd kind of speak when spoken to, always respectful. Never really was an outgoing type person. But put me on a field and I was shouting and screaming and talking to anybody and everybody, and I didn't care who you were. And that was me as a player. So, again, I think the imposter syndrome that comes with football all just like goes with self-doubt. Am I good enough? Am I not? But I used to always get told growing up, especially from my dad, used to always be the same thing of saying, look, if you're good enough, you're old enough. Like, he's not putting you in a back line as a centre back to tell you to take it on your chest. He's putting you in because you're good enough. Now, believe that you're good enough, or else he wouldn't have chosen you if you're not good enough. So you almost have to just go out and do what you've already done to be in that position. You don't have to go out there and now all of a sudden be something different. Go out there and be the same person that you have been to be noticed. And when you start seeing it like that, then all of a sudden you kind of just go, yeah, actually, do you know what? I'm going to just go out and play as I am. I'm going to go out and win headers, win tackles, what I've been doing in every other age group that I've played in. And if the manager thinks it's good enough, well, then that's all that matters. And that's what, fortunately enough, I was in the right place at the right time for the right manager to like how I played.
Well, it certainly was the case, and like I said, he did start getting the opportunities with the first team. Can you sort of sense so when the first team management are watching you during the academy games and training?
You do and you don't. Like, you kind of get a little bit of an insight to where you might get somebody say, look, the manager really likes you, or the manager's been asking questions about you. Like, make sure you keep working hard. Like, maybe it could be something where they try and give you a little bit more of a boost of confidence. They might say to you, you've been doing really well. The manager came up and asked, like, how are you getting on today? So he's always watching. So it kind of keeps you on your toes a little bit more and you kind of get a bit excited. But at the same aspect, you're better off not knowing. You're better off just carrying on as you are, because, like, with some people, they can't handle that and other people can. And I think some people look at it and think they'll take their foot off the pedal a little bit because they go, I'm being watched now. I'm doing amazing. And then all of a sudden their performances start dropping. Just as much as if somebody hears that the manager's watching, they get a little bit more nervous and they start trying to do things that they haven't done for the manager to be watching. So, yeah, like, you get that little bit of an intel sometimes by a coaching staff in the academy and say, oh, the manager really likes you, make sure you do really well this week, or make sure you keep doing what you're doing and you have an opportunity. And as I said, I was fortunate enough for myself that I got that.
Exactly that. And you've already mentioned that you would go on to make your debut against Watford. Could you tell me what that experience was like for the first time the manager saying you're going to be involved with this squad? And I couldn't imagine the feeling what it was like when he told you you were going to be coming onto the field of play as well.
Yeah, like the week before that game, it was the last academy game of the season. And the first team were playing, so we all had to travel over, and my mum and dad were over to watch my last game. So when they were over watching, I played and went to watch Derby, and when Derby got a result on that day, it meant they were safe for the last day of the season. Everything was going to be fine. And I didn't know my dad had a conversation with Nigel Clough on the top of
Oh,
the
wow.
top of the hill. So Nigel Clough said to me mum and dad, if we get a result today, Mark is going to be on our bench next week. So my dad never told me. And then after the Derby game, when my mum and dad were leaving, my dad said to me, I'll see you next week. And I said, no, I'll be home next week because the season's finished. And he goes, no, I'll see you next week. And he used to make a joke of it, so I thought he was joking around, because he used to say, me and my mate Nigel just had a conversation up on the hill, and I thought he was joking. He said, you're on the first team bench next week, and I laughed and kind of said, no, I'm not. And he said, wait and see. So then when the Monday came, all of a sudden, our academy door for the changing room opened, and it was the first team coach said, OB, you're down with us today.
Wow.
Straight away, like, you get the butterflies in your stomach, and you're kind of like, oh my God, is this actually happening? And then you go down, you train with the first team. So I trained with the first team all week. We had an awards evening on the Thursday, and Nigel Clough said to me then, he pulled me on and he said, ready to travel with us this weekend? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, good. you'll be on the bench on Saturday. And I just thought, wow, and I just said thanks very much. So then I travelled with the team on the Saturday morning. We went down, and as I said, you go out and you do the warm up and you do everything that you need to do. And I was sitting on the bench, and we were 3-0 down at half time. So then being 3-0 down, I remember there was like 10 minutes gone in the second half on the 55th minute, and as the minutes ticked by, the fella who was sitting next to me looked over the assistant's shoulder, and it said I was coming on after 60 minutes. So he nudged me and said, "You're coming on in the next 2 minutes." I was like, "No, I'm not." So then straight away they turn around and he says, "You're coming on, go warm up." So look, I never knew what the warm up, like I was so nervous. So you jog up and down the touchline. I think I stretched my hamstring once and I get called back in saying, "Oh, B, come on." So I got my short on, and Noise Clough just put his arm around me and said, "Kick the ball, head the ball, be a defender."
Just
on
the
you go.
basics.
And that was it. Literally, like you say, the basics. And Lewin Nyatanga, who was the centre back, got taken off, and I ended up coming onto the pitch. And Rob Hulse, who was a prolific striker, was playing centre back. Wow. So I was stood next to Rob Hulse, and Rob Hulse said to me, "You're the centre back. You tell me what to do." And I was like, "Okay." So then, like I say, it felt as though, right, remember what your dad said. You got put on this pitch to do what you do best. So headers that came my way, tackles that came my way, I made good clearances. I cleared one off the line, like just was being a defender. And the game ended up finishing 3-1. John Eustace scored when I was on the field. So like it was a great debut, and at the end of the day, like I said, for me at the age of 16, like it was all I could have dreamed of, and that cemented why everything to do with football is like, this is my life now. Like, this is all I want for the rest of my life. And this was all, and it kind of all came together on that day. And as I said, if I could relive it again, I'd keep reliving it over and over, because it was just such a special moment.
For sure. And sometimes I feel like with fans, so you already mentioned that at the time Derby, they secured survival, and then going into these last few games, perhaps you could consider them dead rubber games, because my team at the moment, we're certainly going through some of them as well. But we're seeing like youngsters at the moment be given a shot. And what you said there is indicative of that. Although, yes, you could consider it boring games, but it's a real good opportunities for youngsters like yourself to be given an opportunity. And with the side being 3-0 down, do you also think that was the perfect way to come into it, knowing that there wasn't really too much pressure or jeopardy on the line?
Yeah, like there was no jeopardy or pressure in the game at all. And look, I was told by Nigel Clough that if the game had been any different, or if Derby, like, he didn't feel as though he could have started me as a 16-year-old, but he said he contemplated it. So I could have started that game at 16, but he said also that could kill your confidence just like that, because you could be 6-0 down at half time, your whole confidence is gone, and the game has just run away from you. So even how he handled it, you're 3-0 down, there's nothing really to play for. Bring him on at centre back, because what's the worst that can happen? Give him 30 minutes. And to have the 30 minutes that I had, and to kind of take to it as I was, it took the sting out of the game. We got a goal, and as you say, it was like the perfect scenario. Obviously, it wasn't great to lose 3-1, but it was the perfect scenario for me, and it made a massive difference to me, because on one hand, as you say, they are dead in the water games. But you also have to think of the 16 or maybe 17, or sometimes even these days 15-year-olds who are getting brought onto a field. Yeah. How is it going to be for his confidence and his progression if you put him into a game and he could be a fullback or a centre back and a striker? All of a sudden, with that striker, he is tearing this youngster apart. And as he's tearing this youngster apart, he's doing all these other different things. And with all of that, you kill his confidence in the space of one game. Do you know what I mean?
In an interview.
And those things, that when he ends up killing somebody's confidence for the sake of that one thing, you kind of look at it a little bit and think, yeah, we probably didn't need that. So as a manager, yeah, it's great to put these players in, but you also have to take into consideration, right, how is this game going to plan out? Is this going to be good for him? Yeah. Right, this is the moment to bring him on. So as much as fans sometimes call out for saying, just play the youngsters, you also have to think of them. Yeah. You also have to think of the youngsters to kind of say, well, realistically, them as a youngster, how are they going to take if they have a really bad game and it's on front of 25,000 people, and as
Yeah.
well as that you've just conceded heavily, like you'll be remembered for that. That'll kill that confidence to where all of a sudden they go into that shell and they probably don't progress, and then football seems totally different to them, and then they go, I don't want this anymore. So you do have to be careful with how you do it, but he got it spot on for me, and as I said, it was something that was amazing for me.
Also, you mentioned about what a great job Nigel did in that situation. After the game finished, what did the players and management all say to you after that? Was it just about trying to keep you grounded, for say?
It was great when the final whistle went. Our club captain at the time, Robbie Savage, came over to me, put his arm around me, said, "Brilliant, well played." Took me over to where my family were, pointed up, waved to them, and different things.
Mm.
And then everybody afterwards were just saying, "Well done, you've done really well today. Like, well done on your debut." And that's all that really gets said. And then at the end of it, it was like the first time I've seen like media and a media presence.
Yeah.
I was standing at the end of a tunnel, and you have about 5 or 6 microphones in your face asking you, "How do you feel? How about this? How about that?" And you're kind of
Yeah.
standing there like, "Whoa." Like this is real now. Like it's not something like it's not playing on a Sunday and you've just played in your local park. So it was a massive eye opening experience. But again, it was almost kind of like, right, now you've made a debut. Now kick on. Now let's see what you're made of. Now you've got that out of the way. What's next? Like there was never being able to settle on it and go, yeah, maybe debut. Everything's going to be great now.
Yeah.
Like you almost have to get better next year and maybe want to look at a couple of more games. And then the next year after that. And that's how your football career unfolds. You have to always keep trying to better what you've just previously done. Because again, there's another 16-year-old like me somewhere along the line wanting to take my job. And the next time
Yeah.
and the next time and the next time. So, as you say, it was something where they all congratulated me. They were all really happy for me. And I felt on top of the world and I loved every minute of it.
Well, this patch of your career, it looked like you were really starting to be recognised and accoladed for what you were doing. So we've already talked about you being handed your debut at 16, such a young age. I'm pretty sure you won an award for Best Academy Player at Derby. You were being recognised at international level. Once again, complacency, it could have very easily got the better of you thinking, I'm better than all of this. I'm going to get to the top levels. Once again, how do you keep your feet on the floor and stay grounded?
Do you know what? It's me family, me dad, people like that surrounding me. Like I wouldn't be allowed to get carried away with myself even if I tried, because it's just something that wasn't built into me to think that I'm better than other people. I would always think that, yeah, I've done really well, but you know what? I'll go again because, as I said, I was playing for the love of football. I wasn't playing to be better than people and to outshine and I'm better than you. I played football because I loved it. I wasn't playing for the accolades. The accolades are just great requirements you get along the way for doing really well. But my family would not let me in the slightest think that I'm going to be better than somebody else because they would tell me off straight away. Nigel Clough as a manager wouldn't let me think that I'm better than anybody else. But the way he was as a manager, when I get back with the academy and I start training with the academy again, because it doesn't go straight away that I'm training with the first team every day. You go back with the academy, and then he wants to see how I'm going to react around the academy. Do I walk around like I'm a bit better than everyone? Do I not work as hard now that I'm back with the academy because I've made my debut? So like all of these things are all things managers pay attention to. So like if I wasn't to be performing really well, if I wasn't working as hard as I was in training, if I wasn't performing for the academy side as I have been to get me debut, they would look at that and go, nah, he thinks he's better than what he is. No, we don't need that. His attitude isn't right. So you always have to almost keep yourself grounded, which then again comes from your family to almost think, no, there's always going to be someone wanting to take your spot. There's always bigger and better out there. There's always going to be the next person. So do you know what? The only thing I can do is I've got it in my power now. I'm going to just keep going and I'm going to just keep training and I'm going to keep enjoying it. And that's what I've done. And don't get me wrong, there's times you don't have the best of games, but I'd rather not have the best of games by everything just not going quite right than the lack of effort.
Yeah.
The lack of effort is something that I don't think I've ever not given. Like I would never not give my everything. Like, that was like the bare minimum for me. If I gave everything, whether it was good, whether it was bad, at least I gave everything. Sometimes can go great and sometimes it doesn't. And that's life. But yeah, that's one thing that I think it was just because of how I was brought up that I'd never believe I was better than anybody.
I think it's really interesting you mentioned that mindset, and probably a word that could be summarized for your career is that resilience mindset. And going on to that, we mentioned about the highs you experienced in 2009, but there was a huge setback. I don't think you could really get bigger in football, but in 2009, when doing routine scanning, you did notice there was an issue related with your heart. First of all, how do you find out about that?
Well, I think as you just mentioned there, I came back for pre-season, and in that pre-season you start your training, you do all your long distance running, and because I was able to register fully as a Derby County player, you get your routine medicals, your height, your weight, your blood pressures, your heart condition, everything, your joints, and the heart scan was getting done. And I remember I went in and I had me echocardiogram done, and the doctor called the physio into the room and closed the door behind him and said, "Look, we found that you've got an abnormality with your valve," which the abnormality was I had a leak in aortic valve, which he said people can live with throughout their lives, and you might never know that you've got it until it may affect you later down in life. He said yours looks very minor, but he said it's something to keep an eye on. Again, I didn't know anything. I didn't feel anything. And he was just kind of like, yeah, but look, we'll keep an eye on it. So we get you another scan. So I carried on training. And then after a couple of training sessions, I remember my MRI scan was coming up because they wanted to see the function of the heart, the function of the valve, and see it all in live play. So I went and had the MRI. And with that MRI, what started off as a minor leak, they came out and told us the results of that. And we got told on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being nothing and 10 being the worst, my valve was leaking a 7 or an 8 back into my heart.
Wow.
So then things start getting taken a little bit more serious. So that information got given to another specialist. And in that time, I wasn't really training much. So again, I went and seen the specialist. They told us like what the results meant, which basically they said that my heart is a certain way and the right ventricle to the left ventricle and all of these different things. One is a little bit more limp than the other, and the heart rate is up so high because your heart is working so hard. But look, we're going to give this information over to a surgeon, and with that, he'll be able to give us professional opinion on it. So we said, okay. So then in all of this time, I wasn't really doing much games or I wasn't training. And then my family flew over for this consultation with the surgeon. So then when they all flew over, we went to Glenfield in Leicester, which is the heart hospital there. And we remember I was sitting in a room, like a little small office. There was me mum, me dad, and the Derby physio and myself. And then the doctor came in. He put his diary on his desk and he had this model heart in his hand. And he said, "Mark, your heart is 3 times the size of what it should be for someone your age.
Wow.
And if you don't have the operation done this year, you're going to die." And
That's mental.
every other consultation I had leading up to that was, I won't need an operation for 50 years. I won't need an operation for 30 years. And now all of a sudden, if I didn't get the operation that year, I was dead. So that was something that, to me, it didn't seem as though he was speaking to me. Like, I honestly felt as though, like, you can't be speaking to me, like, this isn't real. And then he started to explain everything that was going on with my heart. He said, basically, with the blood that's leaking back into your heart, he said, think of your heart like an unblown fresh balloon. He said, blow that to full capacity and let it go back down. It goes a little bit more limp, but it's bigger. He said, blow it up even bigger, and then it's bigger. The more that it goes and expands, the bigger your heart gets, but it never goes back to normal size. So I remember I asked him the question of saying, will I still get to play football? And he said to me, "Mark, you'll be lucky to play down the park with your friends. Probably playing professionally," he said, "is probably going to be too far of a threshold on your fitness to even get there. So that's when the news became a little bit more devastating to me. Not the fact I needed open heart surgery, it was the fact of saying I might never get to play football again. So with that, he said, look, we've got 3 different operations we can give. He said we can give you a metallic valve, which means you're on blood thinner so you can't play football ever again. He said we can do this operation called a Ross operation, which was you swap the aortic valve around with the lung valve, which are both still your tissues. That will be something that will end up being okay for you, but then you'll need a second operation at some point on the lung valve. Or, he said, we can give you the third option of a pigskin valve, which is a prosthetic valve.
Yeah.
And, like, the question we're asked is then to say, like, which one would kind of benefit me to try and get back playing again. And he said, the pigskin valve is probably the best one, but he said there's no guarantee. He said it'd probably give you a maximum of a year to a maximum of 5 years. But he said anything in between that, he said it mightn't even take to your body. And I literally straight away, without hesitation, said I want that one. Like there was no kind of debating with the family on what I should do and what I shouldn't do. It was like, no, I want that one. And again, my family went along with me because he told me the story about he had a young girl in who was a gymnastics or whatever it was in a certain sport. They went in for a pigskin valve, and within 18 months it failed, and they had to go back in for a second open heart surgery. So this was all like kind of guesswork, and as you said, it depends. Risk. Yeah, and this all depends on if the valve is going to take to your tissues and take to your body, and it's all one of those. So I think I went for that operation. So when I got told I won't need an operation for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, he looked in his diary and said, I can do it in 2 weeks. So then I had 2 weeks. Then Darby sent me home for 2 weeks to be with my family in Dublin.
Yeah.
And in that 2 weeks, you're just surrounded by your family telling you everything's going to be okay, and other family members phoning you saying, look, everything's going to be fine. You're a young, fit lad. They'll be in and out. Like, you won't even realise it. You'll be back on that pitch in no time. So I went and had the open heart surgery, which took about 6.5 hours. And I had that in the October of 2009. And then from October till January, I was sent home after the operation. And once I got sent home, this is why I always say Nigel Clough was such a good manager for me, because just before my open heart surgery, I got offered a 3.5-year contract, a new 3.5-year deal. So that even in itself was him showing a confidence in me to get back playing or give me an opportunity. Like he had a loyalty in me. And he would phone me while I'm back in Dublin to make sure I'm doing walking as I should be and keeping all my steps up as I should be, phoning me family, making sure they're okay. And this is a manager of a championship club who has his own stuff to worry about, but yet would still pick up a phone and make sure that I'm doing okay. And then I flew back to Derby in the January. And then from January, I done slow jogs because everything was all guesswork, because a physio doesn't know how to rehab a heart. A fitness coach, how do you rehab a heart? They're used to hamstrings, quads, ankles, and all these types of injuries. But in fairness, as much as it was guesswork, the fitness coach took it as, well, how do you get a person fit? You do intervals, you jog, you walk, you jog, you walk, and you keep your heart rate below a certain rate, and you slowly build it over weeks. And like the more that I trained, but the more I seen the other lads training on the pitches next to me, I always felt as though I'll never get back to that because they just look so much fitter than me. And I just thought, I'm trying everything and I'm not getting back to this. And look, they persisted with it. And then after 6 months, I ended up, from the October till I'd say about February time when I had to go back to the hospital, I'd done like a fitness test, which was walking on a treadmill. And I'd walk and they'd speed it up and I'd keep walking and get faster walking. And they told me, Mark, your heart, they said, like, you're doing so well. Like, everything is amazing. Like, the observations on everything is amazing. So I knew then I was heading in the right direction. So as much as I wasn't at the fitness level of football, I was on the right direction to get myself fit again. And I was doing what's right for me. And then I ended up getting back playing in the middle of April. for our under-18s team. And I got back playing middle of April. I played a couple of academy games, and then I made the first team bench by the end of that season at Cardiff at home. So
Yeah.
even though I didn't play much football that season, that was probably the most significant season for me, because everything that led after that used to always be the same thing to look back at and say, well, if I can get back from this, I'll get back from anything. And that built the steeliness probably more into me, and gave me more of a love for football than I thought, because I can see just how quick it could be taken away from me.
I suppose that really sums up your mindset though as well. So you mentioned more or less you had to start back from route one, where you were going through the under 18s once again. You were doing fitness drills that you would have been doing at very early levels. Do you think this did engineer the best sort of mentality for you looking back?
Yeah, I think that was like the start of like a mentality that I would always pinpoint it, that anything that happened to me used to always be the same fact of, well, if I can get back from this won't stop me. And if I can get back from that, this won't stop
Yeah.
me. And that was my whole mentality. And look, I'll always say that as tough as it was, that was the beginning of whatever injury came my way. Like I done my ACL when I was 18. And I look at it and say, but getting back from open heart surgery, that wasn't going to stop me. Like
Yeah.
I had a microfracture in the same knee. So if I can get back from an ACL and an open heart surgery, I can get back from this. Now, these are all serious, serious injuries, but yet they didn't seem as serious, because I thought, well, I'll get back from this. And now, look, at the time, I'm not saying that I could sit there happily and say, yeah, I'll get back from this. Like, you had to put in so much hard work. But I knew I just had that drive in me to say, this is for football. Again, the love for football that grew through all of this is the fact of going, I know my career right now is on a timescale. Every single season I play, I have a heart scan at the end of every season to see if I'm allowed to play the next year. So if this is going to be my last year, make it the best year possible. And then if I get the all okay and the all clear from a scan at the end of that season to go next year, well, then that season will be my next season. But every season was almost kind of broken down to say, within this year, make it the best that I possibly can. So even though I get injured along the way, well, you know what? I need to get back, because the one thing that I kind of always used to think to myself was, the only thing that can stop me now is my heart. Everything else you can always fix and mend and do what you need to do, but the only thing that can stop me is my heart, because the heart is something I have no control over. So when I did get injured, it probably knocked me back, like, it knocked me back emotionally a lot, because I used to always think my career is on such a time scale. Like, I can't afford to be injured. I don't want to be injured, because literally by the time I get back from this injury, I mightn't have a career after this. I might, they might tell me at the end of this season, Mark, your valve is leaking again and you can't play again. And I've just wasted 9 months of it being injured with an ACL. So like that, it would affect me mentally more than anything. But there was always still that reinforcement of people around me. There was always the reinforcement within myself to kind of go, you'll get back from this, you'll go again, and you will do this. And as I said, the mindset that open heart surgery gave me, I look back at and I appreciate so much, because look, it's not to say that would I have had it before, I don't know, but I know I had it afterwards, and it made it even clearer that I had it afterwards, so nothing was ever going to get in my way.
You mentioned that injuries and all the injuries, in a weird sort of way, they force you into enjoying your career a lot more as well. And I suppose this was exemplified when you would go on to make your return against Cardiff. How proud of a moment was that, and where does that rank now in your career moments?
I think when I got to play in the under-18s was probably more of an achievement than saying I made it back to the first team bench at the end of that season. Like, once I was back on a football field, I didn't care where it was. I didn't care whether I was going to be with the under-16s, 18s, reserve team or first team. Like, once I was able to be in a professional setting, to be back on a football field, to kick a ball and get to defend again, that's all I cared about. So to make it to a first team bench was the bonus. And to be honest, I made the first team bench probably as a little bit of a reward for doing so well. Like, did I deserve to be on it? I don't know. But did Nigel Clough do that in a way to kind of give me a little bit of a boost to say, welcome back, great to have you back? which again is another great managerial decision that he probably made to make me feel as though, yeah, I'm back, I've done this. So, but once I got to play for the under-18s in that, I'd say, end of March, beginning of April time, that was when I felt as though I can relax now, I'm back. And once I jumped into football, I didn't care about my heart anymore. I didn't care whether I was blocking a ball, making tackles, winning headers. I was back being me again, and that's all I cared about.
Exactly that, and you would go on to eventually work your way up, marking a remarkable return to say the least. And I was looking at your stats, and I would say it looked like you really made your break through perhaps something that shouldn't have happened with Russell Anderson being injured for Derby, and it looked like you really forced your way in the team and got a foot in the doorway at that point.
Yeah, like I remember that pre-season. I played majority or nearly every game in that pre-season, most minutes in that pre-season, and again I was only 18, but everything was going really well for me. Like everything was going great, and I felt as though I was confident and I was part of the first team, and I'm doing really well. And again, opening day of the season, did the manager want to start me? I don't know, but he went with experience for the opening day of the season, and it was unfortunate. Russell Anderson is such a great defender, like with an amazing career. And look, to be surrounded by people like them in that changing room, look, I was lucky to have the changing room that I had surrounding me. But unfortunately for him, he got injured with his hamstring, which meant I got to come on and we got to win the game. We beat Birmingham, and then from that moment all the way till Christmas, I played nearly every game, and that to me was something that, did I expect it to happen? No, but was I ready for it when it did happen? And I was, and thankfully I took my opportunity.
Did it demonstrate that you did have to take your opportunities, even when you probably weren't expecting it, that you really always had to be on your A game?
Yeah, but I think that sums it up for everybody in football, because, like you say, a manager can leave you out, or you can get injured, or something can go wrong, and you can be annoyed sitting on the bench and thinking, "Oh, this is terrible. I should be playing." And then straight away, an injury happens, and you're on the pitch. Right? Are you in the right mind frame for going on? Are you in the right mindset for playing this game? Are you switched on enough? Like, you always have to be ready, and regardless of anything, that for me was always kind of like, well, yeah, I was ready. Like, I didn't sit with disappointment. I didn't sit thinking, oh my God, I'm real nervous. I thought, no, I'm ready to go out and play. If the manager needs me, I'm there to play. And it done me no harm. And like you say, it does. It shows you that no matter when, anything can turn straight away. Anything can turn at the drop of a hat. And you always have to kind of stay on your A game. You always have to be ready for the unexpected. And that was something that, like you say, you get given the opportunity, and when you get given that opportunity to go play, just like anything else, like I said, Russell Anderson is someone that knew he had a youngster in myself wanting to play ahead of him. Just as much as when I started playing, I know there's going to be another youngster coming from the academy wanting my position. And that is the whole journey of football. You always have to stay prepared, you always have to stay switched on, and you always have to be ready to take your opportunity.
We mentioned about football, it can change literally in the flip of the switch. And I think that was probably illustrated probably when you played against Burnley, because you mentioned it earlier that you had a real good run of games in which you were being played in the first team. But you did make a key defensive mistake against Burnley, and it did lead to you being dropped out of the squad for a while. Can you remember that game and how damaging it was for you at the time?
Yeah, like I remember the game. I think, like, in the first half of that game, I remember chipping it over the striker's head and playing out from the back. Like, that is the highlight and a great part of the game. But I remember the ball getting played to me, and I tried to pass it to the left back. It got cut out. He ran around me, crossed it in, and Charlie Austin scores. And in that moment, it's almost kind of like you're sitting there thinking you want the world to swallow you up. You want, oh, like, this can't be happening. Like, this is my fault. And it's how do you bounce back from it? And I remember I played a couple of games. I played a good few games after that, and it was at the Christmas period is when I got dropped out, because I think the Burnley game, which was great because Nigel Clough is the manager, is someone that, right, no, he's made a mistake. It's a young, inexperienced mistake. But he stuck with me again and stuck with me again. And then it was only after that, I remember I got to the Christmas time, and Sean Barker got back fit as the club captain, and he went in ahead of me at West Ham away. So look, I'll always look at things like that and say it wasn't a defining moment. It was just about, right, well, you have to dust yourself down. It teaches you lessons. You make mistakes. You get on with it. Like, if you sit and dwell on it, is when it kind of eats away at you. And I always say, like, you can always mirror it back to life. You make a mistake in your life, what are you going to do? Sit and think about it, or do you know what? The next action is going to be a positive one. And that's exactly what the game was, and that's what my career was. So it taught me a lesson to kind of go, keep everything basic. Yeah, you do develop, but you have to make those mistakes to learn from them, or else, look, nobody's ever going to have the perfect career. Nobody's going to ever have that type of way where it just goes great until you hit ultimate greatness. You have to have certain mistakes and certain things that happen to you, and they're the reasons why we learn.
For sure. And once again, in that point, you just mentioned about the importance of Nigel Clough and how important he was regarding all of your career. And I think this was once again shown in December 2011 when you were injured. I think you suffered a really bad injury, but I ruled you out for quite a while the following pre-season, in fact, when you were starting to get in and around the team. But despite that, Nigel Clough always showed faith in you. During a press conference at the start of the following season, he said you were still championship ready and that you could go on. And then when you did start getting in and around pre-season again, it looked like he didn't want to rush you when it came down to the league season. He didn't want to put you in territory that he knew could have potentially been damaging to you. It did really feel like he was the perfect manager for you.
Yeah, no, 100% he was the perfect manager for me. Like, he suited me for the player I was, for the mentality that I was, for how he enjoyed his defenders defending, midfielders creating, and strikers score goals. And like, he was there's no ways about it. Like, from how his dad is to who he is, like, he's an old school type of footballing man, and I was an old school type defender, and it did work out really well. And he was the perfect manager for me. And I think because he showed a lot of loyalty towards me, I would show the greatest of respect and loyalty back to him. So every time I did get injured or have a setback, I wanted to give everything for the club. I wanted to give everything for the manager. And I think that is the sign of a good manager, where you do have to have loyalty towards players. I think specifically nowadays in football, I don't think there's much loyalty. I think it's easy to just kind of go, well, who's in form, let's play them, or who's favouritisms and all these different things. Everything's very political in football now. There's no loyalties. Whereas, even though I've been injured, these days, just as quick, they'd probably be easily to ship me off and get the next one in. Ship me off and get... He was willing to stick with me because he knew what I had as a player. He knew what he liked of me as a player. So, as I said, I've got the utmost respect. And to be honest, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have had a career. If it wasn't for Derby, I wouldn't have had a career. And if it wasn't for football, I wouldn't have had a life. So I look back at it all now and say, right place, right time. And sometimes that's all it takes in football. And sometimes they're the only things that you need.
You mentioned there about how in modern football there's not so much loyalty. Do you think that's one of the big reasons we're missing those sort of managers where they are willing to go and put an arm around the players' shoulders? A lot more old school approach, I suppose.
Yeah, I think, like, as you say, there's enough in the game in the lower leagues, I believe, that's still around, where there are managers that do get given times of day because teams don't have budgets to be able to convey people in and out and pay managers off and do all these different things. But I think higher up, it seems like it's just crazy because it's getting so commercialized and business wise. Football is, it's losing the passion of what football actually is. So I realistically look at it and say, because it's so business related, if you're not getting results in the first 5 games that you're in charge, right, you're next. If a player gets injured and if a player makes a mistake, drop him, bring someone in who won't make a mistake, because it's so pressurized that they need this success because of the business it is and the revenues that they've got and the fan base, and it goes on. And sometimes you almost have to sit there and say, gone are the days where you've got your Sam Allardyces and you've got all of these types of people that they do have respect for their players. They do have that little bit of loyalty for their players. They do have those arm around the shoulder. And that's missing. Like I think sometimes it needs its old school values back. It needs its kind of earn your respect in the game. It needs the kind of I'm gonna have you out and I'm gonna really go in on you for something that you've made a mistake on. But you know what? I'm putting my arm around you to say, but I need you and I want you to play next week. You show faith in players. Nowadays, I don't think there's much faith getting shown in players. There's no much faith getting shown in managers. It just turned into one of these big corporate, massive industries that football you don't want it to see it happening, but it's losing its passion. Like you say, you see VAR coming in. You don't even get to celebrate goals anymore until someone tells you it's okay to celebrate. But that moment has already passed. So look, there's so much that is getting lost in that, but I still do believe there's still enough of it in the lower leagues that still has the passion and heart.
Exactly. And you mentioned about how Clough could have very easily just forgotten about you, brought in a new defender, but he didn't do that. He stuck with you. He showed trust in you. And I think you repaid that trust perfectly because I was reading about it. After 13 months out, you would go on to get your first start again, and it came against Bristol City. I'm sure it's a game you remember well, but you played 87 minutes. You really had to fight on despite probably losing a lot of energy and still nursing that injury very much so. But reading on the stats of it, it was the first clean sheet Derby had kept in 7 games. Nigel Clough, the media, all really heavily praised you after the game. What a way to repay the trust.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, it works both ways. If a manager's willing to put trust in you, you have to give everything for that manager and you have to give everything for that club who have shown trust in you. Because not only did Nigel Clough want to keep me, you have to get a chairman and an owner who has to justify why he's going to give me a 3 year deal. Why am I giving this? So for them to all trust in the fact of me coming back fit and doing what I need to do, well, look, you have to go out and repay that. And as I said, I remember that game very, very well. I remember the time I got taken off after 87 minutes because I got cramp on the 82nd minute jumping for a header. And I remember the physios came on and he's stretching off both of my calves. I go to the sideline, I'm getting abused by all the Bristol City fans, and then I go back onto the field. And then within the space of 5 minutes, I'm getting 2 more cramps in both calves and hamstrings and everything. Like I gave everything to the game. And
Yeah.
it was something where, like you say, it was a clean sheet. It was needed. Like as a defender, like that's your kind of goal. Like scoring a goal and putting a top corner is keeping a clean sheet and keeping everything out. And to get to achieve that and get to be that, like as I said, I absolutely loved it. So for someone like when you say you have to give and take, if a manager's willing to show trust in you, you've got to give him everything. And I feel as though I done that.
For sure. And then after this match, you did start to force your way into the team a bit more again until once again you sustained another injury. I think it was a similar one regarding your leg, but you did it in the warm ups against Sheffield Wednesday. At this point, when you do suffer so many similar injuries, you must get frustrated. But do you ever feel like sometimes you can be cursed and just feel like you want to give up after sustaining so many?
Yeah, you can. But the injury that I sustained was something they already knew I had. So when I got back playing at those times, and I was playing for most of those weeks, and then I picked up another injury, I was already playing games with that same injury. It was just a matter of they were
Ah,
trying to see how many games I could get. So I had a microfracture in my knee, which meant play Saturday, play Saturday, play Saturday, but Monday to Friday I didn't train. And I was only
yeah.
18, 19. So I had a lot of older experienced pros telling me, look after yourself, be careful, you've got a long career, don't do anything silly. But I just had it in my head saying, well, the manager wants me to play, so I won't train on a Monday to Friday. My knee will settle, there won't be any swelling. I'd go play out on a Saturday, my knee would swell up again, and then you get rid of the swelling through the week and you just keep doing it. So I'd done that continuously for a good couple of weeks and I played a good number of games. And then it was the Sheffield Wednesday one where I went out to warm up. My knee just felt swollen. I couldn't push off properly when I was sprinting and I had to pull out of the starting 11 that the manager had me in for that game. So, as you say, it was a ticking time bomb for my knee and it was a matter of time
Yeah.
before I was going to need the operation, but they were just trying to hold off on it to see how long they could get out of it until I have to go in and get the operation. So, it was unfortunate and it looks like another injury was sustained. it was just that I was covering up for the injury that I already had. That it just we didn't want to operate on it so soon.
Exactly, and you mentioned about already earlier in the episode how these injuries you just didn't want to sustain any. You wanted to try and get everything out of your career. So when you did sustain this injury, are you just thinking, oh goodness, how long is it going to rule me out for?
Yeah, like and they were always me questions to a lot of stuff like how long is this injury for and how long is this going to be? Like I never done anything in halves. So when it was open heart surgery, it took months. When it was my
Yeah.
ACL, it takes another 10 months. So like there was never like a little silly hamstring. There was never a calf tear. It was always like something
No.
really serious. So when I got told that I needed another knee operation, and that happened, I got told it was another 9 to 10 months, and it's soul destroying. And again, it got me down a lot because I started thinking, why does these things have to keep happening to me? And like you say, you go through it, you go through hating the world and thinking everything's against
Yeah.
you. But again, you hit a moment where you snap yourself out and you just say, well, look, if I've gotten back from an ACL and I've gotten back from an open heart surgery, I will get back from this. Like this won't stop me. Now, as much as me career being on a time scale, that was the only reason why I would ever beat myself up, because I still knew I was 18 years of age. I still knew I was young in the game. But
Yeah.
because of how my heart situation was, I didn't know how long I had left in the game. So those injuries did kind of play a mental toll on me massively. But you either sit with it and allow it to drag you down, or you kind of get on with it and you go, right, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to get myself back in, and I'm going to give it another go, and I've got to just keep chipping away. And that was like kind of the story of everything that went on behind all that.
Would you say, looking back as well, this injury was what ultimately prompted the move to Motherwell on loan?
Yeah, so this injury was the sole purpose to why I went to Motherwell, because I think I was getting back into training the next season. Nigel Clough was speaking to me saying he can't wait to have me back in the team and he's looking forward for me to be back. It's great seeing me out jogging and different things. And then Nigel Clough ends up leaving Derby. Steve McLaren comes in. Now Steve McLaren came in and I got myself back into training. They were already on a great run of fixtures and games and they were on their way to Wembley. So I had an opportunity to go out on loan then. I chose not to because I wanted to stick in Derby and I wanted to see if I could play for this manager. Now, I always say Steve McLaren was someone who taught me, I would say, the technical side of football, like the positions and how to play out from the back and your body position and passes that should be on. And if you're going to win headers, take a touch, slow the game down, and all these different things. And worked religiously on backline work and defensive work and what it means to be a defender. And I really learned a lot from him, just as much. So I stayed with Derby. I was 19th man away in Wembley when they played against QPR and they got beaten in the final in the last kick of the game. And then I remember I went in and we went away to Austria in pre-season. So while we're away in Austria and we're in pre-season, we're training and everything's going fine. And I remember I spoke with Stuart McCall, who phoned me, who said he was the manager of Motherwell at the time, and said he wanted me to go on loan. And I said, yeah. I said, like, look, that sounds great. Let me speak to the manager and see what's happening. So I went in and spoke with the manager and asked him, what does he think of a loan move to Motherwell? I've never been on loan before. How does it, what do you think? Asking for his opinion. And he sat me down and told me about my time at Derby. He said it's kind of become a little bit stagnant. He said you started really well and it kind of plateaued and you came back in, and he said it's kind of like just at a stopping point now. He said, I believe going to Motherwell would be great. Go there, get games, get different experiences, because like you say, football is about experiences. And even in that talk, I didn't agree at the time to say never to play for Derby again because he's moving in one direction and I'm moving in the other. But I look back at it now and I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the fact that he was open and honest and said, look, at my time at Derby is done, and he done it in the most respectful way possible. And going to Motherwell for me was a way to kind of opened my career up and opened my eyes up to football outside of Derby, because all I ever knew was Derby. So, as I've always said, I think Motherwell and that knee injury was the kind of beginning of the whole journey around the football pyramid that I had after.
Definitely. And something else I found really interesting in that point is it was more the Motherwell side that approached you rather than the team itself. I've had a lot of players on the past, and they often say when loans come about, it's normally the manager that orchestrates it, it's the club often forcing it upon the player. But this one, it was mainly down to you orchestrating it with Motherwell as well, as opposed to Derby. Do you think that sort of approach is better in football rather than being forced upon? But also, I suppose, is this a common thing now, or is it quite rare, that approach?
No, because normally, like, if you have an agent and different things, your agent gets wind of this team is interested in you and another team is interested in you, and they approach the club. Like, I am someone where when he phoned me and asked about it, I said, yeah, look, I'd be more than happy and I'd be more than willing. But as you say, that's why people are in different positions, because they're there to ask questions, they're there to kind of bounce
Yeah.
ideas off. So for Steve McLaren to be as open and honest as he was, like I say, as much as I didn't agree with it, it was something where he opened my eyes to the fact of going, yeah, actually, do you know what? Like, I will go there. And it gave me a little bit of a confidence to think, oh, yeah, Scottish football won't be all that bad, because even then, all you ever know of Scottish football is Celtic and Rangers. Anything outside of
Yeah.
that, people really don't pay attention to. So I didn't know really much about Motherwell. And as you say, it's a different experience. It was a way for me to go and fight for my career, and you don't really know what to expect. So, yeah, I think if teams do get in touch, look, I've been in the opposite situation where the manager wants you out of the club, and that is a
Yeah.
situation you never want to be in. And unfortunately, I was in that situation, and that type of way of being pushed out of a club is the complete opposite of what happened at Derby. And to be on both scales, I'd much rather be able to sit there and have a conversation about why I should go out on loan and hear the honesty of it than hear the side that I heard years down the line, when things didn't go quite right.
For sure, and it'd be interesting to actually hear how it sort of contrasts both those times. But before I do as well, I want to talk a bit more about that as well. So you mentioned about having that honest conversation, and I suppose it was probably really helpful in terms of that being so transparent. And then a few months later, when you didn't get your contract renewed, you probably knew a bit more that it was coming, as opposed to it just being dropped on you.
I did and I didn't, because I still had a year left in my deal. So my opinion of it was, do really well in pre-season, and under the manager, I don't know what can happen. I might get a couple of games in, I might not, but he was open and honest early on when I have the conversation with him to kind of tell me, well, Mark, go out and get different experiences, go out and experience the different lives in football, and your time at Derby is kind of come to an end. We're going in this direction, and you're just not for us and whatever. And I was just like, right, fair enough. So I didn't see it coming. Like, I didn't have it in my mind that Derby were willing to get rid of me, because Derby was my home. Derby was everything to me, type of thing, because I didn't know any
Yeah.
different. So it was kind of daunting, and I almost felt as though that first day at school again, that first time moving away from Dublin to come into Derby, I have to do this all over again. And as you say, it done me no harm. Like, it showed me the different experiences of football. I met loads of amazing people in Motherwell. I met great teammates, like people that I was able to have a great laugh with. And as you say, it just opens your eyes, because it's a different level of football. You play against different players. I got to play against Celtic and Celtic Park, like different those types of experiences. And yeah, like, it's something that I wouldn't change now. But at the time, to say, was I expecting it? No, I hadn't got a clue.
Wow. So you mentioned about not having a clue there and it being dropped on you. What was the stage like planning ahead then after Derby? I would imagine you had cards on the table, clubs being interested in you, but for you, this would have been a whole new experience. You'd never gone through it before.
Yeah, like, Motherwell was the first club that I ever heard about wanting me out on loan. So I didn't really have cards on the table, and I was sitting weighing up options. It was the fact of, I spoke to Steve McCartan about Motherwell, who got in touch with me. What does he think? He said, yeah, and I just agreed to it, and that was it. So
Yeah.
there doesn't really be much thinking or contemplating that goes into things. Like, I wasn't sitting there like with a list of teams to go, which one would be the best team to go to. It was kind of like, well, who wants me to play football? Wherever wants me to go and play football, I will go and play. So Motherwell was that. And once I went there, as I said, it was another footballing experience that I absolutely loved. It taught me a lot about loads of different things. But I was there for a year, and that's all that I needed. And I didn't get a contract offer to me there after the loan move. Went back to Dublin, but again, I was playing football enough to at least be spotted by the Luton manager John Still, who went up to watch Motherwell against Partick Thistle, and I played well in that home fixture, and he noticed me through that. So, like you say, sometimes it doesn't matter where you're playing; you just never know who's watching, and that's how I got my next move then to Luton. So things happen for whatever reasons, and things do come about in football. But the more you're in, as I used to always get told, the more you're in the shop window, the better. So never cared about where you're playing, cared about how you're playing. I cared about the amount of games you're playing, and keep on playing, because there might be that one person that spots you that one time to say, I like him. Because like I've said at the beginning, it's all a game of opinions.
Exactly. And you mentioned about how not too many clubs were interested in you at the time. So you did obviously go to Luton. But it's quite interesting because I was reading your stats with Luton. You only played 8 games before being loaned out to National League side Southend. What went wrong at the start then with Luton? Was it falling out with managers, injury?
No, it was just we signed a lot of players at Luton at the time I signed. So we had a 32-man squad. So we had a lot of like senior players all wanting to play. So when we were all in the league, then we'd have cup games, and then we'd have League Cup games and FA Cup games and other different cup games. So there was always a way to change his 11. There was 11 who played the FA Cup. There was another 11 who played in the League Cup on a Tuesday night, and there's another 11 who play on a Saturday. And to be honest, it was working out well enough until you start getting knocked out of cups, and then there's not really many games. And look, I wasn't someone that was doing terribly bad there, but it was just something that just didn't suit me. Like, once that manager left in John Still, I was seen as a John Still player. The new manager, Nathan Jones, that came in, was someone that, just for whatever reason, just didn't like me as a player, didn't like me for whatever reason. And I never got given the opportunities that a lot of people got given at Luton. So I'll always look at it and say, did I get a fair crack under Nathan Jones to go out? And if I went out and played terribly while he was manager, I'd hold my hands up and say, okay, my fault. But I never got given that opportunity from the moment he came in the building. I never fell out with him. I never had arguments with him. I never had a disagreement with him. It was just, again, this is why I always say it was his opinion. And his opinion was I wasn't the player for him.
Could you tell then straight away that he wasn't interested in you and that he was never going to give you a shot?
No. I didn't know that he wasn't interested, because, again, I'd make the bench sometimes. I'd be training with them. And it was almost kind of like to see me out till the end of the season. Keep him happy. And now next year we'll make all the changes. So when I ended up going out to Southport, I remember I got asked by Nathan Jones, go out on loan to Southport. I heard Southport want you. So if you go out on loan there, you have 7 games to play. It will get you back your confidence, keep your fitness up and all these things. So in my head, I'm thinking, if I go out and play well for Southport and do really well, the manager knows I'll be confident to come back and play in his team. That's the mindset you go into these things. You think you're doing this to benefit that. You don't just do it to think, oh, well, I'll just play games. So I went out and I done really well at Southport. I enjoyed my time there. They were in a relegation battle. We got ourselves out of a relegation battle in the 7 games I was there. And I came back to Luton. And once I came back to Luton, I slowly but surely started to understand me going out on loan wasn't to benefit me to get back into the Luton team. It was to kind of go out of sight, out of mind. Let him go out and play. Like, we've moved on in what we're doing here. And unfortunately, Mark, you're not here anymore. And then I went away in that summer. I never played a single minute. So even in the times I wasn't playing for Luton, I was getting people texting me from home. Mark, you're not in the squad again this week. Are you injured? Are you injured again? Mark, why aren't you playing? Are you injured? And I'm having to text people say, like, I'm not injured, just the manager doesn't want me. And then the next season after that, I done pre-season on my own because the manager didn't want me training with the first team. And then doing pre-season by myself, I went out on a couple of trials. Then the manager came back from that pre-season tour. I think they went to Austria and the under-18s went to Italy. So I was in the training ground by myself. And then when the under-18s came back, I was training with the under-18s. I wasn't allowed to train with the first team. The only time I would train with the first team would be if they had an injury in their squad. So I was just someone who was floating around. And he tried to ask me if I wanted to pay up on the last day of on the last day of the deadline day of that pre-season. I didn't have any clubs knocking down my door. I didn't want to take a pay up because, look, at the end of the day, if I had a family house to move back home to like people do when they struggle, yeah, would I have taken it? Possibly. But I have to fend for myself and provide for myself and live in hotels and pay for apartments and have bills. I can't just afford to say, yeah, I'll take a pay up and then take a chance. I need security somewhere. So Luton was that security for me. And then I went back out on loan to Southport. I got a bit of an injury that I came back and had to rehab at Luton. But in all of that time, it was just the manager, yeah, he just didn't want to see eye to eye with me for anything, and I didn't get given the opportunity. So I trained with the under-18s, I trained with the under-16s, and that was it. And that was the opposite side of, instead of a manager almost helping you to get out and helping you and giving you advice, it was almost kind of like, well, now look at now that you're not with us, now that like you're not playing with us, and now that I don't want you here, you don't train with us anymore. And that's the way that it literally was. So I seen all of that, and realistically for myself, it showed me the horrible side of football.
I think it's really interesting as well about how you earlier mentioned that false hope, and it's probably better if he would have just been completely transparent with you. It would have given you an opportunity to look at options, maybe another loan where you could have gone out. On that note, though, did you ever get any opportunities to have one-on-ones with the manager, or did you ever get a chance to call him up, I suppose?
Um, I would say that we had a couple of conversations only when it suited him, as in when he was looking to pay me up on a deadline day, he's on the phone. When he's looking to talk to me about asking me why am I not leaving the club, he's on the phone. But was there anything to say, Mark, how are you actually getting on? Like, do you need a hand? Do you need help getting another club? Do you want me to put your name out? But only when I turned down taking a pay up was I sitting in his office, and he said, Mark, if I was you, I wouldn't have taken that deal. I would have backed myself to go to another club. I would have backed myself to go do those things. And I used to sit there and think, right, but that is you in your situation. Have you thought about my situation and the open heart surgery, that my career, I can't afford to mess around with this. Like, this is my one chance and my one chance only. Like, I don't know how long this will last. So have you taken that into consideration? And unfortunately, he didn't. And again, as you say, you learn from these things. But again, the resilient side came out was the fact of, well, if I can make it back from open heart surgery and I can make it back from an ACL and I can make it back from a microfracture, well, then this manager's opinion on me, I can make it back from this. My dad used to always say, you never become a bad player overnight. So I was very low on confidence. And even I look back at now and think potentially I was depressed. But you know what? I kept going, and I had a good fitness coach who was there who was putting a lot of work in with me. I was still doing my gym sessions. I was making sure I was keeping myself well because, just like the Derby opportunity, if an opportunity comes where a manager wants me to go and a manager wants me to go and play, I'm ready. And that's what happened at Newport.
So how did you get out of that toxic environment then? So you mentioned about joining Newport, after that. Was it about approaching them, or was it about them approaching you on deadline day?
I approached them. This was in January, just after the Christmas.
Wow.
I approached Newport because when I went to Southport for those 7 games, their manager, who was Dino Marmaria at the time, he was the manager of Southport, but he was the assistant manager of Newport County at that time. So when I knew that he was a manager as he was assistant manager in Newport County, because again, as I say, because I done well for Dino Marmaria, I sent him a text saying, "Is there any chance you could get me to Newport?" He said, "Leave it with me. Are you fit?" And I said, "I haven't played any games in so long, but I'm ready to play. That's my next step." He's like, "Leave it with me. I'll see what I can do." He spoke to Graham Wesley, who was the manager of Newport. I met up with Graham Wesley. They got me in, and then, as I said, the rest has been history with that.
It's really interesting you mentioned about how it was you who engineered that deal. And probably looking back, I would imagine that was probably the most important phone call of your life.
Yeah, it definitely was. Like when I sent them the text and I got a chance to meet with Graham Wesley, that was probably the most, like, the biggest meeting of my life at that particular time, because I'm meeting a manager where, look, I've not played for 10 months for Luton. I've not played for a really long time for Luton. And this meeting means I need this to happen. I need this to come true. I need this. I need to start playing games. And when I got given the opportunity for it, and Graham Wesley said, "Yeah, look, we'll be willing to sign you," and I had to sort out all the logistics with Luton. Newport had 20 games left in that season. They were sitting rock bottom of League Two. They were 11 points or 12 points from safety at the time that I signed in the January. And it was, "Right, Mark, what can you do?" So I got given a 5-month deal to go to Newport. And it was, look, if you stay out of relegation, you get a new 2-year contract. And if you don't, we'll shake hands and we go our separate ways. And that was the deal that I went on. It was a last chance saloon chance. And I almost had to kind of build myself back up and prove myself all over again. Like I gave myself the incentive. I got given a challenge. And the person that I always am is the fact of going, yeah, I wouldn't back down from that challenge. Like I backed myself, and I got that confidence back in myself that, look, over a long period of that season, for the last 6 months of that season, I played the majority of nearly all those games. And then for the season to finish as it did, to be 11 points from safety, and then Graham Wesley getting sacked through that, Michael Flynn taking over in March, and from March we had 12 games to go and we were 11 points adrift at the bottom of the table.
Yeah.
And we ended up going on this amazing run where we won 7 games, we drew 1 and lost 2, and on the last day of the season we won 2-1 to keep ourselves from relegation, and I scored the winning goal. Like, it seems like a fairy tale to talk about it, but to go from 10 months of not playing, but also not giving up on myself, to give myself the best opportunity where, as I said, I had to text the manager to bring me in here. I had a lot to prove to myself. I had a lot to prove to anybody else who doubted me. And this was the kickstart that I needed. And like you say, moments like that happen once in a blue moon. And thankfully it fell to me. And I always say sometimes potentially it was meant for me because of everything that I've been through.
Yeah. Well, it's extraordinary. And now you have the chance to look back. I know at the time you said, you mentioned how you had this great mindset. But now looking back at it, obviously it would have been challenging for any player from going in a real adversity, not starting any games, to go into a team that's really threatened with relegation. But for you to get in the squad really helped the team. And then to finish it off on the final day, getting the winner against Notts County. I mean, that must have even shook yourself.
Yeah, like, it was the first time I've ever cried for football. When that final whistle went on the last day of the season, I broke into tears because there was everything on the line for me. There was a football career. Obviously, you get emotionally invested in the club that you're in with such a battle that we were in, so you understand the significance of, you don't want to be part of a relegation as a personal thing for a footballer, but you don't want Newport to get relegated because they had such an amazing fan base. So, like, there was so much riding on it. And to be in part of that team that got to turn around basically the impossible. The impossible where everybody had you already written off, everybody had you down and out and buried. To fight back for that and to be the underdog that got to do that, it almost represented me as a person. My career was the underdog story that I got told at 16 I'd never play again. My career was the underdog story when I got injured, will he be okay again? The same with Luton, the underdog story of no manager likes you. You're training with the under-16s. Okay, I still finished that same season to score that same goal in the same league Luton were still playing in. So I got to prove things to myself. So that whole underdog mentality and that whole fighting mentality, Newport suited me perfectly as the person I am to the club that they are. Like Newport, I've always said, is the closest thing to Derby that I've always had, as in how the club felt a home from home. Derby will always be a home from home just as much as Newport will now. Like that mentality of we're all in this together. Like I said, to still be here till this day is exactly the reason why.
Yeah. Well, I think my dog's agreeing with you on that one. But I note as well on that goal, looking back at it, it probably has become notorious. It's one of the biggest goals for the club's history in the recent era. But I bet yourself, you didn't even realise you had that in your locker. It was such a sweet strike. And then I couldn't imagine how you felt after seeing the ball hit the back of the net.
Oh, like that was my first ever professional goal in the English league. Like I didn't expect myself to score that. But again, it was just one of those moments where it's a split-second decision. You chest it, the ball's there, you volley it. As I said, it can go 100 feet over the bar or it goes in bottom corner. Like it's just one of those moments that I'll always be thankful for. And as I said, it should show that I've never scored a goal like that before, because the celebration was just manic. It was chaotic. It was like I ended up getting nudged and I fall over, do a tumble, everybody on your back. And yeah, it was like a moment that I'll never forget. But again, it all happened all at the right time for me. Like when everything is stacked against you and everything's on the line, you produce and you back yourself. And the team that I was surrounded with, the people I had in the same club, and we were all in it together. So it done like a full circle of ever since you left Derby, you find you're good and you're bad and you experience loads of different things, and now you know what's good for you again. And that's what Newport was for me, and I've been lucky and grateful to be here ever since.
When you do see Newport fans now, do you often find when speaking to them that will be the first thing they talk to you about now, that goal?
Yeah, like it always will be. And like I think even in Newport, in the situation they're in at the moment, like I will still have fans to say, Mark, get your boots on, we need you again. Like
yeah.
It is. It's something that it's a great thing to be part of a memory like that. Like that's what you're in football for, is to create memories and moments and different things, because nobody's going to remember all the 100 games that you played. Like people remember specific moments. And for me in my career, I've been lucky enough and glad enough to be able to have experienced a lot of great moments, a lot of moments that will stick out in people's histories for when they look back in games, and to be part of those. Yeah, like that's the way I see in football. So to have that as a moment for me, the club and everything, yeah, I'll sit and talk to anybody about that. I think that's what the running joke would be, is that don't ask Mark about that goal because he'll tell you everything. So yeah, like I'm proud of it. I'm proud of that kind of moment that has happened, because, like I say, everything and the significance that was behind it for me personally was a lot on the line.
For sure. And you also mentioned about some overlaps between your famous season and this season currently with Newport. And the fans are probably right. They could probably do with a few strikes from yourself like that. So maybe you will have to get back your playing boots. But I suppose from your point of view now, how you're looking at it, do you actually see a lot of overlaps between that successful team and this one? And do you believe they can still stay up, Newport?
No, I definitely believe they can stay up. I don't think their situation was as severe as what ours were, because I think the worst that this team has done, I think, was around December, January time, I think, where they were 5 points from safety. Whereas we were 11 points from safety in March. That's with 10 weeks to go. You have to do an 11-point swing just to be level on points to then get yourself out. So we had to do the impossible, where this group, everything is in their hands. They just have to keep worrying about themselves and focusing on what they need to do and pick up their results to what they need to pick up, because there's overlaps in a sense of what fans are fearing. There's an overlap of everything, but there's not much of an overlap, because we needed to worry about what other people's results would be and how other teams were performing. Because at the end of the day, if Hartlepool had kept winning their games, we wouldn't have had an opportunity to be able to get back. So we don't have to worry about anybody else's results right now. We just have to worry about our own. It's in our hands to do what we need to do. So once that message gets across and the players are well aware of it, that's all that matters. So we don't have to rely on other teams to do us a favour. That what we had to rely on when I was playing, we needed a lot of favours to be done. And thankfully we got them and we capitalised on it in games that we needed to win.
For sure. And going back to your team as well and that period, after you did secure survival, you were handed a new contract. So you mentioned about being repaid your trust. There it was straight away. And from that season onwards, it looked like you really marched on. So I'm looking at the stats here. In 2019, you went on a brilliant season. You managed to get to the playoffs. A complete turnaround from that relegation scrap.
Yeah, like, as I say, we went on the brink of almost being relegated, and then the following season we finished mid-table. We played against Tottenham in the FA Cup, and then the season after that, the squad we built for those 2 years, we went to a fifth round of an FA Cup to play Manchester City. We beat Leicester City, we played Middlesbrough, we beat Middlesbrough, we beat Wrexham, and then all of a sudden, okay, now we're in a playoff semi-final. Now we're in a playoff final at Wembley. Like, we changed the whole mentality of the team, the club that was always used to battling survival. Now we've given a bit of hope. Now everybody's going, oh, Newport can get promoted. Newport have got a really good side. Newport are making history. Newport are giant killers. Everything good about the place was starting to get noticed media-wise. Everywhere was always saying, in the FA Cup, if you draw Newport, be careful going to Rodney Parade because it's going to be a tough game. Newport always give as good as they get. Like, everybody used to be terrified because what we built, and we epitomised a lot of what Newport is as a city in our club, in our team. We were a hard fighting team. We would really put our bodies on the line. We would all fight for each other. We fought for everything that we had. We made games horrible, but we were a very good footballing side when we needed to be. We had some very, very talented players along the way, and we were a very all-around, very good team. We had players who can defend. We had midfielders who could create, and we had strikers who could score goals. And we had a very, very good goalkeeper, and we had a very, very good number 2. So, like, everything, we had the recipe of all good stuff, but it all started from an adversity of almost being relegated. Where that built our togetherness. Almost being relegated built us as a solid foundation that we added to it and added to it. And year after year, we just got stronger and stronger. And look at maybe the squad that we had at one time when we made 2 playoff finals. In one of them, we should have been promoted. But unfortunately, it never happened. But just like everything has to start all over again. When those players move on, you need to start a new, fresh regime about building it. But yeah, I just believe we gave the city a lot of hope in that time. We gave a club something to cheer about, not just to be happy with surviving, not just to be happy with things like that. We gave the club the kind of belief of saying, we're promotion pushing now. We're the big, like, we're a name in this league. We're the team that people fear in this league. And that's what we built for ourselves. And like you say, it was credit to everybody who was involved at the time, from the manager and Michael Flynn and the assistant and Wayne Hatswell to every single player that played. Like, we all done our bit to get Newport on the map again.
Well, you did exactly that. And you mentioned about coming so close to promotions, like you said there, 2 playoff finals at Wembley. That must have been a great feeling as well, getting to Wembley despite the outcomes of the results.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Like, to get to play at Wembley in a playoff final and get to be captain of it was amazing. Like, it was one of the biggest highlights of my career. Now, just as much as the biggest downfall of my career was getting sent off at Wembley in the 89th minute. Now, as you say, you're never going to know the outcome of things, and things happen for whatever reason, but I'll always still be proud of everything. So, to get to do the things that I done with Newport, and the second time they went to Wembley, and I just had me open heart surgery, so I was part of the staff there. To get to see all of these things and to get to be part of that, there's a reason why I'm still here at this club. I want to see it get back to those successful days. I want to be part of where we're getting back down FA Cup runs and where we're close to pushing for promotions. Are we close to that now? I'm unsure of it. Like, I don't know what the future might hold. Potentially, if you stay out of relegation, but like, this is something where Newport now are galvanising. They're getting everybody together. Let's go back to the fighting that we know. Let's go back to the nitty gritty that we're based on, that the DNA is about. And then the DNA of Newport that all fans know is the fact of saying, yeah, when push comes to shove and we need to support and we need to dig in and do really well, we know we've got it. And we just need a team that's going to represent that. And that's why everybody's in hope and prayer that we do stay out of relegation. But again, it's in the players' hands. Like, sometimes that's the hard part for me not playing football anymore, is the fact that I can't affect anything on the field anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm just exactly like a fan to sit and say, well, I can only hope as much as everyone else, but I'd rather be a player right now, as nerve-wracking as it can be being in that situation. I'd rather be a player because at least I can affect something.
For sure. And in a lot of the episodes I've had on in the past, with the players coming on, they say they learn the most through the hardships of their career. And you already mentioned about one of the biggest, probably, downfalls and worst points of your career came in one of those Wembley finals when you did play Tranmere Rovers. Obviously, you got sent off in the 89th minute when the game's still goalless. What happened in that situation for you? From watching the highlights, it just looked like perhaps Norwood got into your head.
I wouldn't even say Norwood got into my head. I was on the halfway line and they made a clearance, and let's say I'm facing you straight on here. He spins this way of me. So when my arm comes out to stop him, his other arm locks me in like that. So it was clever striker play. My arm looks like I'm holding him and pulling him. When I watched the back so many times, you see my arms trying to come out like this to say I'm not holding him, but he has me locked in. He kicks his legs backwards. Both of us fall over, and it looks like I've dragged him to the ground. Now, I look at that and say, it's silly on my behalf to be in that situation for him to be able to do that, but also it's clever striker play. It's clever from him as a striker. He was a very, very good striker. He was someone that, like I say, he always had good battles against them, but he was switched on as a person. And to know I'm yellow carded, I remember there's a picture I've got on my phone, and there's one online of where I'm kneeling looking up and he's looking down at me almost laughing. And I remember the words of him saying, "You're gone. You're off now. You're gone." And I knew
Did you know you were off at that point?
Well, I knew it was a free kick. I didn't know what the referee was going to do. I tried to plead my cases in to say to the referee, I didn't touch him. But you put yourself in stupid situations, things happen, and that was that. Like, and I regretted it from the moment I went off the field. I burst into tears. I was crying. But the lads almost put enough in to get it to penalties where we almost got over the line. And unfortunately, they scored in the 118th minute. And with 2 minutes to go, it doesn't really give you much of a chance to get back into the game. But I look at that sometimes and say, was it our year to get promoted? Potentially not. But then the second time the players went, they were probably a lot more equipped footballing wise, and they had a really good season, and they were well deserving of being a promotion pushing team. And they got robbed out of that final. And to get robbed out of a final, I think it was more hard done by than anything else. So to be an onlooker to that, it was heartbreaking. But it was heartbreaking because it was kind of like used players deserved it that little bit more. Like, we deserved it for the heart and the soul and the aggression and everything we put into that season. But we were riding a wave that was just, everything was just amazing that season. Like, from every game that we played in, from the FA Cups to whatever, we loved every minute of it. Maybe it was one step too far. Maybe it was my fault for being sent off. Like, all of these things are if, buts and maybes. But I think the second cup final that they went to the playoffs, I think that was more heartbreaking because it was like taken away from them where they actually deserved it.
Well, even the first one, I think you could definitely say there was a lot of contentious decisions in that final. But I couldn't imagine what you were going through. So you get sent off, you're watching on from the changing rooms, and then you see that last minute winner scored by Tranmere. As a captain, I'm sure you would have still had to address the teams. What do you even begin to say after they start coming into the changing rooms?
I didn't say anything. I sat in the physio room with a towel over my head crying. Like I couldn't say anything to them because in my mind is I let everybody down. I let the team down. I let the manager down. I let the fans down. I let my own family. I let the world down in my mind. Like because that's the responsibility I used to take on my shoulders. That it's my responsibility to win games or lose games, whether it's right or wrong. That's the pressure I put on myself. So to be sent off and to do what happened, um, look, I apologise to people. I cried when my dad was there. I apologised to them, and that's all that I was able to do. And then afterwards, you have people coming up saying, "Look, you've been brilliant this season," and nobody's words were going to console me. Nobody was going to say anything that was going to make me feel better. But the good thing about football is, if you do right by a fan base and people know that you give 100%, the fans backed me. And the fans got behind me and said, Mark, don't worry about it. We go again and we get back to this again. And don't worry yourself. You've been brilliant for us. Which it does as a player to know you're getting support in that aspect as much as anything else. Do you know what? Like, it meant the world to me. And next season, I wanted to take that on and say, yeah, right, next season, we're going for this again. And we're going to get over the line next time. And it spurs you on. And again, we had a manager in Michael Flynn and even Wayne Hatswell as an assistant, where the very first day of pre-season, the minute you walk in, go, oh, here's the man that still has us in League Two. It's kind of like to break the ice a little bit, and you get on with it, and like you kind of like break the ice on it that little bit and say, oh, well, it's his fault why we're not promoted, and you have a laugh. It's his fault why we still have to go to Carlisle away than travelling in League One. Like, these are the things that, it breaks the ice. You can see the funny side of it. Let's go again. Let's just get behind everybody and let's go again. And that's what we did. And look, I had to retire when COVID happened with the second open heart surgery in the middle of that season. And then that was the end of my career. So, like, it was something where everything that happened could have ended on a fairy tale with a promotion. Yeah, but am I going to look back and look at the things that didn't happen, or am I going to appreciate the things that did? And the things that did happen for me outweigh everything that didn't. And look, I'm so happy and grateful for everything that I went through.
Well, exactly. I mean, you mentioned that perhaps it wasn't quite the fairy tale, but I think I could argue and say it was certainly the fairy tale with remarkable runs on the FA Cup, that survival day. I think you've given the fans a lifetime of memories, and I'm sure you would have loved to do even more. But you mentioned you had to have another heart operation. Once again, how do you find that? And I'm sure all your million issues around football, they just turn into one about your health again.
Yeah, like, I remember it was during COVID. It was the very first lockdown, and we had things to keep fit with. And when we had to keep fit, it's like you're doing little bits and little bits. And I came in one evening and I got a massive thump in my chest. I could feel my neck pulsing, my heart racing, and I just didn't feel right. And it was something that kept catching me breath, and I kept coughing, and it just wasn't going away. And the next day I spoke with the club doctor. He told me it'd be difficult to get into the hospital because obviously COVID and everywhere was getting outran with patients and all these different things. But he ended up getting me a heart scan a couple of weeks later and found out that my valve was leaking again, and I got told it was leaking very, very badly. And straight away, my heart sank. I started to burst into tears. I remember I just cried straight away, and the doctor tried to console me and say, Mark, look, there's procedures we can do to try and get you back playing again and whatever. And I said, you don't understand. I said, I made a promise to myself and family and different things when I was 16. I said, I was having one operation for my career and I was having one operation for my life. I said, I'm not going to go through this 5, 6, 7 times. I said, I'm having two, or like, look at in the grand scheme of things, it could be more than 2 operations that I need in my life. But in my mind, I'm having one for life and one for my career. And I said, I'm going to have to retire. So he consoled me and said, Mark, look, I'm sorry to hear that and whatever. I came out of the hospital, got straight on the phone to my mum, told her the situation. She flew over straight away. And yeah, it was just like a downward spiral from then. Like, I was And the worst thing was that with every symptom that I didn't feel when I was 16, like the dizzy spells and the breathlessness and the fatigue and all of these different things that I never felt at 16, I felt at 27. I felt every single lightheadedness. I felt the breathlessness. I felt the fatigue walking upstairs. I felt the palpitations on my chest. I felt everything. And I felt so bad that like I was really worrying myself into panic attacks, and I started to have panic attacks. Wow. And then the panic attack started, but when a panic attack started, I thought I was actually having a heart attack. And I remember I was crying on the sofa here with my mum, and my mum was praying for me, and we found an ambulance, and yeah, like things were just getting really, really bad. And then I got admitted into the hospital around end of June time. And when I got admitted into the hospital, I spent in total, before my operation, I was there for about 3 weeks. 3 weeks. They were waiting on a date to get actually operate on me. And in that time, there was a couple of complications. So I got a date that my operation was going to be on a Thursday. And on the Tuesday, I started to get like a nausea type feeling and sweats and clammy hands and everything one evening. You press the buzzer for the doctor. They come rushing in. I don't feel well. I started getting sick. My heart rate was through the roof. They thought I had COVID. So they had to test me for that. They had to test me urine to see that I have an infection. I had to get another echocardiogram to see if I had an infection. How was the valve? Like, everything was kind of like red alert. And on the Wednesday, they were still checking for an infection, waiting on the bloods and the urine samples to come back to see if I was allowed to have the operation, because if I had an infection, they weren't allowed to operate on me until the infection went. But in the situation I was in, an operation was needed sooner rather than later. And then the surgeon came into my room that evening. And when the surgeon came into my room, he stood next to my bed and said, "Mark, how are you feeling?" At this point, I'm already moved on to the main ward where I have all the observations around me and nurses keeping track of me. And the surgeon said to me, "Mark, look, the issue is you have an operation tomorrow. If there is an infection, we can't operate on you. So what we will have to do is we need to get these results back because your valve is hanging on by a thread." And he said, if your valve breaks off in the middle of the night and circulates around your body and gets lodged in your brain, he said, you're dead. Now, he said, this is something that he said 3 weeks ago, he said, we've had a patient in, and he said he's died from. So we do have to operate sooner rather than later. So with that, I'm on the phone to my family because no family are allowed into the hospital. Speaking to my mum on the phone and just saying, look, everything's going to be okay. I'm going to be fine. We'll operate tomorrow. My mum is saying the same thing back to me, but both of us are kind of been told the same thing of it's not looking good for Mark. Wow. Like, I got told I had less than 24 hours of living, basically. And with that information, it's like you don't sleep at night. You don't know if I close my eyes, am I going to wake up again? And the next day, the doctor came in, and with that, tells me that there's no infection that they can operate. So I shake his hand, I start bursting into tears. But that moment changed my perspective on open heart surgery, on something I was terrified about, on something literally I couldn't think of wanting to have ever. The minute I told me it was saving me life, it was the best thing I could have had, and I couldn't wait to have it. And I went in for the operation. The operation took 7.5 hours. I got wheeled out. The doctors told me, "Ma'am, that the operation was a success." But they also said the state his heart was in, they couldn't believe I was still alive. They said my heart was in that bad of a state that they were surprised I was still alive in January, and I was still playing football in January. So to realise how lucky I am, or how lucky I was, is beyond measure on a lot of stuff. So again, you go through the rehab and you kind of go through all like the cardiac rehab and all these different things that you need to do to make sure that you're okay for leaving hospital. I get out of hospital, I think 3 weeks after the operation. It usually is a week to 10 days, but there was more complications along the way where I started to get inflammation and I started to feel sick again. And I was kind of like losing all faith in the will, because unfortunately I had just retired from football. So I had no reason to get back fit again. I had no reason to have a drive in me again. I had no reason to motivate myself. Like, everything was just kind of like, it got explained to me and it makes sense. I was over hospitalized. Hospital felt like it was a safety net for me. Like, I could click a button and a doctor's going to come running and save me.
Yeah.
Like, there was nothing of that. Like, that's not real life. So everything that was kind of going wrong was happening, and they got rid of the inflammation. I ended up like leaving the hospital after 3 weeks, and then that's when I got even worse. I was having more panic attacks laying in bed because I have a new valve in my chest that clicks, 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 and you can hear it and you can feel it pumping on your chest. So all of those things are all new sensations. I wasn't sleeping at night because I scared myself into sleeping, because I used to think, I don't know if I'm going to wake up. That's the mindset I was going into. So I wouldn't sleep. And then the only time I would sleep would be when I'm too tired to keep my eyes open. And then you'd wake up the next day wondering, I don't even remember falling asleep. Like, so I was just constantly tired, constantly overthinking. I was just surviving every single day. And again, I didn't see a way out of it. I was struggling to live. Like, every day just felt as though, let's get through today. Let's get through the next day. Like, there wasn't any excitement. The fact of, I'm out of hospital now. This is brilliant. This is great. It was just surviving. And I was severely depressed. I got told that, like, I didn't know what depression was. Like, I thought depression is if you feel sad, make yourself feel happy. Like, I didn't want to get out of bed. I wasn't really showering. I didn't want to leave the apartment. And I was blaming it all on, well, I've just had open heart surgery. Everything's fine. Like, I'm okay. I had open heart, like, and I was making excuses because the doctor said to me, Mark, you had open heart surgery, but you can still shower. You can still get out of bed. You can still do these things. No, I can't. But everything was all adding up. Like, I wasn't sleeping, so I'd wake up even more tired. And then when I wake up even more tired, well, I don't want to get out of bed, and I don't want, and everything was just fitting into itself. And I started going back into the football club, which again, during COVID was hard to do, because being around footballers and you're getting told, oh, COVID, if you get infected, people who are vulnerable could die like this, and all of these things that were going on. So I was scared of my own shadow. And with that, there was a lot of people along the way. Obviously, people wanting interviews to find out, like, Mark, who had the heart surgery, now you're retired, and tell us the story behind it all. And there was all of those things. So, like, you think about just get back to normality, just go out and speak about it, get normal. And I wasn't comfortable enough with it to talk about it, but I was forcing myself to do it, which then put me into more panic attacks, which then what put me into probably deeper depression, because it was exhausting me that little bit more, and I just couldn't find myself. I wasn't myself anymore, and I didn't know how I was ever going to get back to being me. And the more I went into football, the more I was getting a little bit of routine back, a bit more normality. But the only difference was I'm not allowed to play anymore. And then I started to talk a little bit more. So then the club, look, I was still having panic attacks in the training ground, because the one time that I had a panic attack, I was in our training ground. And while I was in the training ground, I remember I was sitting on the sofa and my heart felt as though it was ready to stop. And then it would just pick up and go really, really fast. And I'd start getting really lightheaded. The physio came out and they noticed that, and I started to cry. And it was the first time I had a panic attack in front of anybody. But it almost kind of made it real that, oh, people are seeing this now. Everybody's seeing me.
Yeah.
So then it made me a little bit more comfortable around everyone, that I didn't have to hide it anymore. And then 2 lads that I did a podcast with, they reached out to me and wanted to help me. So then I started working with them. And then the club put me in the direction of a counsellor, and I started doing work with them. And then over time, you learn more and more and more, and you just kind of learn to get comfortable. You learn to get relaxed in your environment. You start learning to understand everything that you've done and how hard on yourself that you are. And the more that I just learned that as I went along, the more I started to realize, yeah, like little bits are getting back. I'm starting to understand. I'm starting to kind of put one and one together to make two, and two and two to make four, and it's all starting to come together. But then I started to take a few more chances for myself, and I went on a speaking course to be able to just understand my life story, to be able to piece it together, to go and talk about it, to get comfortable in speaking about it, to talk about the most uncomfortablest of things. And this is why, like, I don't mind talking now, because the real situations, the things that people will go through on a daily basis, but aren't comfortable enough to talk about it. So when they hear someone else speak about it, it makes them feel a little bit more comfort inside them to go, well, I'm not alone. As much as you do feel alone, as much as you might feel like a burden on someone else's shoulders, where you start realizing that nobody's a burden. It just takes you that little bit of strength to talk about it. And I learned that more and more over time. And with the right people around me, with my family around me, and the right friends in football and outside of football around me, I was able to turn my life back around. And that's why till this day I make my life as an example, and an example to show that you can face any adversity, whether that's work, injury, life threatening, whatever it might be, a breakup, anything. You can face any adversity and still make a success for your life once you're willing not to give up on yourself. And that's listening to people, that's taking on stuff, and that's learning as you go along and use it to your advantage. So just as much as anything now, when people talk about retiring, football for me right now is the fact of saying, do you know what? If I didn't have these open heart surgeries, and I didn't have these injuries, and I didn't have that football career, I wouldn't be the person I am now. I wouldn't have the perspectives I've got on life now. So do you know what? I am thankful for every single thing that has happened to me, because you know what? I'm proud of who I am today, and I'm proud I've gone through all those things. So I'd never feel hard done by. Are they unfortunate? Yes. Would I wish them upon me worst enemy? No. But you know what? These things happen. And in life, things do happen. It's about how you want to bounce back from it. It's about how you channel it into a positive way, see the silver lining, or you want it to eat you up as a negative. And I know what it's like to eat me up as a negative. And I didn't want to live that way. So now I put everything in my energy and my power in the fact of saying, well, I have that choice to make it positive, so I will make it that way. And that's what I've done for myself to this day. And I wouldn't change it for the world.
I think that's very well said, Mark. And like I said, it's inspiring to hear that side of the story. And you mentioned about how really you feel the way to get around this issue is to enlighten people about it, to highlight these issues. Do you feel that about the whole football landscape and people who have gone through similar issues for you? That the way you do address it is by speaking about them so openly, because it feels like, particularly in football, not just player wise, but also heavily with fans as well, there's this certain masculinity that perhaps we should look to sort of disconnect from. That sort of, I don't know, I don't cry in front of people, for example. I don't want to show weakness. You mentioned about having a panic attack in front of the teammate to begin with, and you mentioned you were quite nervous about that in itself alone, but after having it, you felt comfortable in front of them. Is it just about highlighting these issues?
Yeah, I'd say it's about highlighting it, but it's the kind of show that from a footballer to a fan to anybody, we're all the same. Like every single person is the same. And that's the way I see it, is that, like, because I'm a footballer, I don't have an easier depression or a lighter panic attack. And just because you're a fan, you don't have different things to me. Like, we all have different situations, and that is something that is always going to happen. We'll always have a difference of a situation, but we'll always have the same outcome, which is the feeling to it. The same feeling will always be felt, because my depression isn't worse than your depression. It's the same thing. The situation is what makes it seem worse, because I had it because of open heart surgery. And you might sit there and go, well, I've only had depression because I lost a dog, or I lost a family heirloom, or whatever it might be. So, Mark, yours is worse than mine. Well, it's not. It's the same depression. So when you drop the situation of it all and talk about the feeling of it all, it makes everyone feel we're all on the same page. We're all on the same level. We're all in the same world. So it's more about speak the feeling, talk about it with pride, talk about it with honesty. Because when you're honest with your life and you're honest with yourself, well, then how can anybody tell you you're wrong when all you're doing is being honest about yourself? So it's instead of putting the mask on, trying to be something you're not, or trying to put the face on when you're not feeling quite right. That's when life becomes difficult, and that's when things become very difficult. But when you take the mask off and you say things for as they are and be the person you truly are for how you feel and what you are, life becomes that little bit more freer to where people do start listening then, or the right people hear you, and the right people come into your life, because then they're the ones that you don't have to fake it in front of to make new friends or to keep those old friends. Life happens, and sometimes, like you say, I'd rather live a life that I'm being completely myself and have the people who are right for me who stayed with me than live a different life that have people who surround me for someone who I'm not.
For sure. And what you said there is probably paramount to why you would eventually become club ambassador with the club as well. So you mentioned about telling your stories on the podcast to begin with and using these sort of opportunities to take time with people like myself, not the biggest content creators in the world, but people who do have those sort of audiences where you can still share across that message. And even if you're impacting one or two, it's still bound to make a difference. So taking this role at Newport, was that sort of the aim for you and what you wanted to get out of it by helping more people again?
Yeah, 100%. Like the opportunity came to me, and I got asked, what do I think about this? And it's kind of a job role to make it as best as you possibly can for yourself. And I look at stuff like that and I think to myself, right, well, yeah, it's great. I want to be able to share positivity to people. I want people to be able to see the brighter side of life. I want people to see my life as an example that, do you know what? If he can do it, so can I. Because I'm no different to anybody else. I'm not a superhuman that I'm different to the next person. So if I'm able to do it, so can you. And to be able to try and be that for Newport as a club, to be able to kind of portray what Newport is as a club through a person, to kind of say, well, Newport is about resilience. Newport is about honesty. Newport is about hard working. Newport is about fighting till the very last minute. The DNA of the place. And if you can have that in me as a person, as well as trying to help people's lives to not see the drastic side, to kind of have a voice that people potentially could listen to and might disagree with some things I say, but could agree with loads of things I say. But it's the fact of being able to sit there and have time for people to sit and go, well, we've all got our stories. We've all got our reasons why we see life how we do with the perspectives that we've got. Okay, let's sit and talk about them. Let's sit and see what your concerns are, and let's see what you think of life. And as I said, if that even helps one person, you're doing something right in life. Like, if you want to be out there and you do something trying to think I'm going to change a million people's lives, well, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You're doing it to help that one person, because then that one person could pass it on to the next person, who passes it on to 5 more people, to then 6, 7, 8. And that's the trend that it needs to be. That one person can make that difference to the next person. And if you've done that, well, then you're doing something right in your life.
We've talked a lot within the last 10 minutes about how this opportunity has allowed for you to help people from it. But going back to Newport, it mentioned it sort of gave you an opportunity to get your routine back, get your way back into football, something you've always loved throughout your life, like you said in this podcast a number of times. Do you think in that sense, Newport saved your life after the operation?
Yeah, Newport gave me life after football. 100% Newport gave me an outlet again on life. This is why I always say Derby and Newport are two clubs that are really close to my heart, because they both stuck with me through two of the most difficult times in my life. So I have everything to give back to Newport, just as much as I'd still give everything to Derby if they asked me to do anything for them. So for aspects like that, yeah, Newport did save me life, because the people who were involved in Newport at that time got me the scans when I needed them. The manager who was in charge got me back in the club when I needed it. The people that we've had at that time were around helping me at that time when was needed. So realistically, there's so many things that I can always pinpoint back to say, yeah, these clubs have helped me and saved my life at particular times. And if
Definitely.
that means for me to be able to go and help others and to be able to share it as openly and to be comfortable in speaking where some people aren't, well, do you know what? I will say it from the rooftop. And again, if some people don't hear it or some people get bored of it, well, unfortunately, do you know what? Those aren't your people. But you know, the people that do listen are the ones that need to hear it. And look, I always believe we all have our stories, we all have our reasons. And if people get comfortable enough with speaking them, you could save someone's life, and the next person could save someone's
Yeah.
life. Like
Okay.
everybody
Yeah.
is significant in their own way for whatever they've been through. So everybody has a meaning to life. Everybody has a purpose in life, and that is to be a good person and help where you can. And that is all anybody can be, and everything else is a bonus.
Exactly that, Mark. And honestly, I'm hoping this podcast can sort of apt that
Mm-hmm.
same message as well by helping people. And then finally, Mark, you've mentioned about this new role being a club ambassador and what you're doing with it. Is this what you want to carry on doing, or do you perhaps want to start to branch into coaching a lot more? I'm sure you've got great attributes in order to get into that sort of range. Or where do you think your life lies now within the next 5, 10 years in the football landscape?
Funnily enough, that you asked that, I don't even know. Like
Wow.
I don't look far ahead of myself. I think for everything that I've been through, I don't look 5 years in advance, 10 years in advance, because look, I almost had a time in my life where I had 20 less than 24 hours of living. So why am I going to look 5, 10 years down the line at something that might never happen? There's something that could happen
Yeah.
tomorrow. Like, and that's literally where I'm at in my life. I'm happy. Where it's led me down the line to be able to help people and be in the position I'm in, I'm very happy. I'm content in what I do. I love what I do, community wise as well as club wise. And I wouldn't change it for anything. And if that alters at any point in these times that I keep working here, well, then I'll deal with that when it gets there. But I don't bother thinking about where I need to work to and where I need to be, because realistically, the only thing I can actually have a control over is the day I've got ahead of myself. Everything else away from that is out of my control, so I don't bother focusing on it. And that's something I learned from myself along the way, which then makes your life so much more peaceful, because I don't have to worry about what happens in 5 years' time, because who knows if I'd be there or not. Just as much as, did I know I was going to retire at 27? No. Did I have plans to play till I'm 35? Yeah. Did it happen? No. So it gives you a big lesson to think we can all have plans for the future, but enjoy what you've got, because you never know what could potentially be our last day. And I don't mean that to sound drastic. I mean it to go, make the most of everything you've got today. Enjoy what you've got, because that's all we can control.
I think that's very well said, Mark. And then finally, for any fans watching this, if they're going through similar things that you went through during your tough times, or they just might want to chat about your football career a bit more, talk about that famous Newport goal, could you provide your social media handles for any fans that do wish to follow your journey and perhaps even get in contact with you?
Yeah, literally, I'd say I'm probably more active on Instagram than I would be anywhere else. Like LinkedIn and stuff like that, it's Mark O'Brien. I think Instagram is M O'Brien 1992. So if people wanted to follow that and get in touch and write a message or whatever it might be, they can do so. Like I'm not someone where I have someone run my socials and I'm this kind of person who stays clear of it. Like if people want to reach out to me, they can, and I'd be more than willing to sit and talk to anybody and everybody.
Exactly that, Mark. And honestly, there's one word that I can think of to describe you, and that is absolute legend. Like I said, thank you so much for taking the time to do this episode today. Please make sure to get Mark followed because, like I said, what a journey that is, and I'm sure in 5, 10 years he's going to carry on smashing it. You know what, Mark? With your work with Rams TV at the moment, who knows? We may even end up working together down the line
Who
on the
knows?
TV scene. Wouldn't that be cool? But yeah, make sure to get this channel followed as well and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.